when I do art, I kind of like going in somewhat improvising. I do use an outline, I do use lines to kind of place things out. So on the first layer in Photoshop, I am kind of going in with a somewhat big brush size. I'm just trying to go in as fast as I can. The footage you're seeing is kind of sped up, so I'm obviously not drawing at this speed, but I go in a little bit quicker to get something on the canvas. Then, when I open the second layer, I lower the opacity of the first layer, and the second layer I kind of go back in and I kind of make the brush size a little bit smaller, and I try to get the line work to look just right, or at least somewhat more clean, I guess. I also try to fix some of the line work that I might not have seen in the first layer, and I try to get something to look a little more presentable with it. Now, I'm not looking at a lot of references. The only references I am using is just to look at Cody's face. I want Cody to at least look like him. I'm not going for accuracy or necessarily 100% accuracy, but I at least want to go for, a drawing that you can sit there and say, yeah, this looks like Cody. So I'm trying to get his attitude down with his face, because I know Cody's kind of a laid-back, tired, lazy type of fighter. He likes fighting, but he's just kind of like, kind of a nonsense attitude, I guess. So I'm going in with a smaller brush size to get more finished, clean lines. Never get married or committed to lines. You're always going to be erasing them and changing them and fixing them. Usually I try not to get tunnel vision with lines, but I do try to get them to a point where I am okay with them. Because I know eventually I'll either get the lines to look the way that they're supposed to, or they're just going to be just fine and I can get away with it. But I try to make them look as good as I possibly can. I fixed Cody's hairline. I realized the side of his hair was going too close to his eyebrow, so I kind of pushed it back a little bit. I draw the little hair follicles in their direction that they're supposed to be going. I do like to kind of know where they're going. I might fix that in the color segment a little bit later. That's gonna be a different video, I suppose. But here I'm just trying to fix the lines. I've seen a lot of thick lines that just look clunky and just not nice to look at. So I'm going back and I'm trying to get more finished looking lines. The arm, I can kind of see that I'm probably going to be fixing it at some other point. Right now, I'm looking for a brush to do the color. Now, I made another layer completely separate from the other layers to kind of do the color. So if I do a mistake, I don't have to worry about redoing the line work or anything like that. So for color, I usually, it's a pain in the ass, but I try to find a basic tone to go with. So this skin tone I'm using, I just kind of picked it out and I was like, okay, this might not be accurate, but I'm just going to use it just as a base. So if I find something that might be darker or lighter, I can always go from this base tone. And I always figured to always fill in what you're coloring in, just completely. Don't go, well, I'm going to do some of the tones this color, then we go in with a different color. Just paint the whole area that you're trying to color that color. So I'm trying to go in with this simple tone. The brush I'm using is okay. I am really indifferent on brushes. I kind of pick whichever one that I like, and so far this one was okay, but I'm not a huge fan of these brushes, to be honest. Photoshop has a lot of brushes to pick from, and you can also download brushes, so I'm still trying to experiment and find a brush that is more my speed. This one is kind of nice, but I've been noticing when I try to do a bigger brush size, it kind of slows down the brush. So I kind of have to go back down to a smaller speed. It only slows down if I'm recording or streaming, which can be a lot of issues. Right now I'm trying to get a lighter tone so it can look like that there is some light coming in. I know that some artists like to have a different layer or just do mixing outside of the color. Now I do that as well, which is fine, but I also like to mix in with the colors that's there because I get to see the differences within the tone. I get to pick which tone I think best represents what I'm trying to go for. It's not something that I'm getting committed to. Color mixing is kind of like playing chess. You're really just putting stuff out there and seeing if it sticks, if it works, up until you either get a checkmate or you just lose and you have to start all over again. It's a pain in the ass. I really hate doing coloring in digital works, but You know, it's also it can be kind of fun at times, but it is a pain in the ass. So right now I'm looking for brushes that are more conducive to what I'm looking for. So I found this brush. This brush, it kind of uses my stylus's tilting a little bit better, which is fine. But as I said, these brushes kind of slow down when I'm trying to capture or stream. But if I go to a smaller brush size, I can kind of get away with it, which is fine. And that's what I'm using. So this one I'm using because it's easier to erase. Now I didn't make a huge erasing right there, because if you make a wrong tone and you try to fix it by just putting other tones in it, it's just gonna look sloppy. So I just erased the tones I did not like, and I wanted to go in with a fresher, with a fresh tone, which is fine. I do mix in white sometimes. I know that can also be a very bad thing to do, but I just do it just to see what would happen. Sometimes I like to mix in random things, see what I get. I also mix in some colors that I would not necessarily think would work, just to see what I would get from it. Sometimes it's just fun to go into a crazy experimental mixing kind of angle. It might not be great. It might not. You might not get what you want from it. It might waste your time, but it's a nice, handy experiment to do, because sometimes I do get something I'm really looking for, mixing colors that I would not suspect to mix. So I'm trying to really hone in on the color. I know the skin kind of has a red, pink, orange, yellow kind of tone to it, so I'm trying to mix all these colors in to get something that I'm really looking for, and trying to pull out from what I'm seeing in the image I'm using as somewhat of a color reference. And color references can be handy. The best way you can kind of pull out colors is by squinting into the image you're using as a reference. But sometimes, you're not going to necessarily know immediately, oh, this is the color I need to use. You're just going to have to guess sometimes. There I used the lasso tool to erase a particular moment, because I figured a lasso tool is easier to erase than using a erase brush tool and just making that huge. So that's why I used the lasso tool in that particular area. I'm a little more pleased with this tone I'm using. I think it fits what I'm trying to get out of the character. Mixing more reds into Cody's face, because I know you can kind of get something out of it from mixing reds, and I'm kind of mixing in the two tones, so I'm kind of mixing in with a lot of stuff. Now, the styles with color can be important. I never really go for realism. I don't really like them, so I am kind of going in for a more cartoonish, cel-shaded look. I kind of want to work with that, because that, I think, is a little bit more my speed. Never really mess around with styles you're not comfortable with. It's fine to make yourself uncomfortable when you're doing art to a degree, but you don't want to do something that you don't know, and then you see it and you're like, this isn't what I want. So I'm trying to go in with this. It's like, okay, you know what, I'm not great with realism. I'm just going to go in with cel-shaded type of look, and that I could kind of get away with, and if I master that, maybe I'll experiment with other styles, but pick a style and stick with it. So thanks for watching. See you in part 2.